All right, I'm going to start up. There is a folder out there on the P drive for the class with today's date on it. If you're interested in copying that folder over to either your H drive or the virtual desktop. We're going to talk a little more Angular today. I get a bunch of stuff on, sent to me all the time from different companies and stuff. One of them today had a thing on IT quotes, and there was one in there. I liked it, so I'm sharing it with you. Give someone a program, you frustrate them for a day. Teach them to program, you frustrate them for a lifetime. I just kind of like that. All right? It's a little take on, what that is. So, but I just thought, like I said, if nothing else, that was interesting. All right. So, here's my copy, and I just want to show you what's in here. There are some code examples, but I wanted to mention a couple of these articles that are in here. All right. And the first one here is AngularJS, the next big thing. I'm not going to go through it. First of all, it's way too big of an article. It's 54 pages, and there's just a lot of information in it. But this is one of the better articles I've seen, taking somebody who has little to no Angular experience and at least explaining the basics to them. All right, and there's a lot of pictures and stuff in here. They go through everything that it's about. They talk about some of the terminology, and then they go through it. You've seen this picture before. So like I said, I'm not going to sit there and go through all this stuff. It's a very good article. All right. What I'm going to concentrate on is this one right here. Learn AngularJS with 5 practical examples. All right, and if you notice, if you come here, and I thought that I saved it, maybe I didn't. Well, I may not have. So let me check. Yeah. So I'll tell you what I'll do real quick is I'll just take that and copy it over to this link I gave you that's on the P drive. I don't want to put it in mine. I want to put it on yours. So. All right. It's called AngularJS Examples, and I went through some of them. I wrote a couple of my own, but they're pretty simplistic ones, but that's what I'd like to show you. All right, so grab that and that. There's that. All right. So this Learn AngularJS with 5 practical examples. Again, they talk some more about what it is. I don't think that's that important anymore. But one of the things I really wanted to get across to you as far as the stuff that's in here in Angular that's important and why you'd want to do this stuff, why you'd even want to use it. Because I actually was reading an article, it was a while back, and it was entitled something along the lines of, why should I even use Angular? It's like, we've already got way too much stuff to learn to begin with. So why do we want to add something on top of it? And the big thing is, it's client side, but it really speeds up a website. All right? And I'm going to show you quickly these examples and then go over a couple that I wrote myself. So the download button would give you the stuff I just downloaded for you, so it's out there. But again, I don't want to run through this. Now, you look at the examples in here, and again, I've used the word before, contrived. Some of these examples might seem a bit contrived. In other words, what does that do? You chose this, but think about it in a larger scheme as far as how you could possibly use something like this. All right? And with this example, what's so nice about it is there's hardly any code. That's what's so good about these examples. All right? And if you actually go out to the site here, you don't have to do this, but if you do, if you go out here, That's too big. And that's too little. But if you were to go out there, you get all 5 of these examples, all right? Not only do you get all 5 of the examples, when I tried putting a bunch of them in and putting them into Plunker, I got the first one to work and the second one to work, but I had problems with 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, but they all work on here, okay? And when you look here, notice it says edit, and when you edit, it shows you the code. So it gives you the CSS, and there's quite a bit of it in here. All right, almost 80 lines or so, and it gives you the HTML. By now, there's a few things in here that what I'm most concerned with, you understanding a few of the things that are in this file. For instance, you've already heard this before, ng app. All right, you know now, or you should know, that's an Angular directive. And that says basically from here on down, it's an app. And if you notice in here, all they have is a div. There's not even an HTML tag or anything else in here. All right? Okay. If you look at the line here, I was going to ask you what this does, but then all you'd have to do would be to read the comment up above it. ng-click allows you to go and add a button to a page, and when you click it, Angular will handle it, calling whatever routine you want it to handle. In this particular example, we say this. We say event.preventDefault. Now, at least you should have some kind of an idea of what this is. We've looked at this before in the JavaScript part of this class. But remember, when you run this, by default, if you click, for example, services, the system is supposed to go off and try to find a services page. All right? That's what you do by default anyway. You all know that kind of stuff. When you do this, you're telling it not to do whatever the default action is. You're canceling the default, which is exactly what we want to have happen. Rather than going to a different page, we're telling it to stop right there. All right? Then we're coming in here too. If you notice, we're saying class equals active. And if you notice, this looks a little different from stuff we've done before. We've got the double curly braces, but it's got class equals. Well, notice what we have here. Class home, class projects, class services, and class contact. What we want to be able to do is we want the active class to be whatever one we just clicked on. Does that make sense? All right. And then all we're doing down here is we're showing that class. That's it. All right. And again, it may not sound like much, and it's a big, hairy deal. There are a lot of uses for this. There really and truly are. Plus, as I mentioned, the fact that, boom, it's immediate feedback. Now, I changed on the one I added, and I had the home page, and then I had the BTC Uber About page and the BTC Uber HTML5 page, and I put a BTC Uber JS page and a BTC Uber jQuery page. All right? But I kept their code in here, so it wasn't going to actually jump to those pages. All right, so that's the first example. The second one, they're building your own editor. Now, why would you want to do this? I'm not really sure. And I have read enough books where they show you how to build your own editor. And the way I look at it is, I can't imagine that you could build something that would be much simpler to use than a notepad. Maybe I'm wrong, all right, but it's already out there. And if you want to step up, you can always use Notepad++. But the idea is you click right here and notice what happens. Okay, see, pretty simple example, all right? Would you want to use that one? Well, if you look in here, they try to build up, and in this example, they put a controller in. The first one didn't have any controller. You may or may not have noticed that first example had an HTML file and it had a CSS file, all right? But in here, we've got a JS file. And remember, when you talk scope, we've talked about this before. That's the glue, as we talked about, between the model and the view. And by now, the model is whatever data is on the page you're trying to present, or you're trying to modify, or you're trying to do something to. In these examples, the model that we've been using, whether it seems like it or not, has been really, really simple. The model in a real life Angular program would probably come, for example, from a database. All right, it could come from a big text file too. All right. But still, when you look in here, that is still, I'm gonna move that up, come on. That's all of it. It's not, again, like there's a lot of code in here. I like this because there wasn't much code, and this is one of the few times where the author put in code and actually put comments in with it. All right. Other than that, same kind of JavaScript, or the same kind of CSS almost we had last time, and the HTML is not similar in here, other than prevent the, stop propagation. Even that, prevent default, you may or may not know what stop propagation means. One thing that we talked about, and I don't remember if it was this semester or last semester, my head's spinning right now. I don't remember which one. But we talked a little bit about stuff bubbling up, all right, and stuff basically cascading its way down. And the idea is when something bubbles up, if I've got a routine that calls a routine that calls a routine that calls a routine, so I'm 4 levels in. If it bubbles up, what happens is the system, whatever you've told it to do, looks right in the routine that it's in to do something. If it can't find it, it goes up to the next one. If it can't find it, it goes up to the next one. If it can't find it, it goes up to the next one, which is the top. If it can't find it there, it throws an error. But when it cascades down, it goes the other way. So if I've got a routine that calls a routine that calls a routine that calls a routine, it starts at the top and it works its way down. But when it propagates, you can propagate up or you can propagate down. But what we're telling it right here is with this button, we're not trying to propagate, period. We're just trying to do something. So we're telling it to stop any propagation that it may normally do. All right? And like I said, that's all the HTML. There really isn't much at all in there. All right? Now the next example, order form. This is, they got the first two to work okay, but this one I had some problems with. All right? And what I was going to try to put in here was, your book for each one of the classes. I was going to put one more thing in there. So you'd have the book here for the Java class. You'd have the book here, etc. And what it is, if it's green, it's part of the total. If it's red, it's not. So every time you click on it, you're adding it to the total. When you click off, you're removing it from the total. So again, think about creating some kind of an inline form for somebody where it was a registration form, where you had a bunch of different things they could sign up for, maybe a keynote speaker, all right, maybe something the night before, which a lot of conferences have. And you could do this, and they could keep adding or removing something and then get their final bill. And again, what's nice about this, just like we've been talking about, is the fact that there's, they just put a form in here, but it's a pretty simple form. All right, we've got an unordered list, which has got our stuff in here. Well, you should be able to guess this by now, because this is one of the things that we talked about, this ng repeat. So what we're doing is, in the example, these are all list items. So we're building in an unordered list. All right? And that's exactly what we're doing right here, is we're telling it to iterate over what we have and print it out. All right? And literally, that's it right there. All right? And then we've got the total, and you saw this a little bit too when we, in our couple of weeks that we've been spending on this. We've got total. You may or may not remember what this is. That's a filter. And we're saying grab that total and filter it to currency. Again, all I'm really trying to do in this part of the class is to introduce you to some of this stuff. Right before class, I get codeproject.com. And there's a lot of places that are online that have really good stuff. And I probably have shown you this before, but just on the off chance I have not, codeproject.com, I get stuff from them twice a week. And so let's say, for example, I wanted something on AngularJS. All right. They've got 50 pages worth of stuff. Understanding AngularJS, introduction, all sorts of stuff. All right. You can go out there and you can sign up for this. The only thing that they don't spam you, but twice a week, you get stuff from them. All right. They've got Android newsletters that they'll send out sometimes. They've got HTML newsletters, etc. Some really decent stuff. All right. Again, the JavaScript that's in here is minimal. You should be able to look at this. It's a services, but you should be able to understand what's going on in here. That's the name of the thing that we saw that was either purple or pink, I guess, or green. That was the price. All right. And notice by default, the first one is active when you start. Okay. And what that means is when you start, since it's set to true, that one is in your total. So as soon as you click it, remember that two-way data binding, it changes in here. It changes. So again, that's always going to be green. Now it's off. So what we did right there when we did that was we automatically went in and changed it. And it doesn't appear right here, but it literally changed that to false. Does that make sense to people? That's that two-way data binding, that you can literally change it two different ways. All right. And then there's the CSS, which is probably really not that important. All right. Then there was a search. I don't know if this was all that great of an example, but there's not that much in here. But if you look, notice there's Bootstrap, PHP, jQuery, etc., Ajax, etc. So you can put that in here. So if I said, for example, Twitter, you can see exactly what happens. All right. The example they give, again, is a bit contrived because this would work. This would work much better if I had page after page after page of these things. All right. It's not really that different from what I just showed you in Code Project, where I went out there and typed in AngularJS. You could do set up your own similar type of thing in here. And the last one was a switchable grid that I couldn't even figure out what they were trying to do. All right. So what I want to show you quickly is just a couple of examples that I put in because they're much simpler than these. All right. Now, the hello one, we don't even have to talk about because you've seen that one already. So I'm not going to go over that one. But let's look at this one that says math. It's a pretty simple example. All right. So we're coming in here, and here we're adding the Angular stuff. All right. So here will be the first number. And again, num1, num2. That's our model. Model equal data. All right. And what we'll be able to do then is we'll be able to put a sum in there and we'll be able to put a product in there. And I put this example in to show you that when you use this, you can combine it with some of the stuff from HTML5. By making that a number attribute, all right, the only thing that's going to be allowed to be put in there are numbers. Now, it still is a little hinky when you first start it up because there aren't any numbers in there yet. All right. But as soon as we go in and we put one in and another one in here, you can see what happens right away. All right. It's an instantaneous type of calculator. And it's simple. All right. And I went in on some of the next examples here and added a little bit more to it. Again, just so you can see what's going on. Well, that looks just like the last one. Yes, it does. Except now we've got JavaScript in here. All right. In your main controller, what this is right there, that pretty much is the equivalent, all right, of a constructor like we're using in Java. Because now we're saying we want this, when this begins, we want this to at least have values in there. So the difference between this one and the previous one is when I run this one, okay, well, it was supposed to. All right. And as you'd guess, I could come in here if I wanted to, and I could say, probably I'd move this one up. All right. So now I come in here. Okay, and I can still type in my own numbers. All right, and I'm not sure why. I thought I saved it. I did save it. I'm not sure why it's not catching that. I played with it at home and it worked just fine. Well, because I did it in here. All right. So again, you can see there's no CSS in here, so it's not pretty, but the same kind of thing. All right. Now, one thing that you cannot do in here, all right, again, that's all we did here. But if we look at the index.html file, you may or may not remember this, but inside of these double curly braces, I cannot do processing in there. You're literally not allowed to do so. All right, and why am I telling you that? Well, did you notice that when we first ran this? All right, we get the NANs there, and technically, when I do this, why am I getting that? Why am I getting infinity? Because that is 123 divided by 0, right? All right. So if I want to put code in there to actually make sure that that doesn't happen, I can't put it inside of that HTML. I've got to put it in my JavaScript. That's what I'm trying to show you. All right. And it may or may not look like it, but one of the things that this is doing is there is some separation in here. That's literally just JavaScript. Now you could turn around and go, well, look, you're doing math in here. All right. That's why typically you don't put the stuff in here in the HTML. You get a little bit more complex with it, and you write the controller and you put code in there. This, what I'm showing you, is the easy way of doing it. And this might have been the same ones. Yeah, these are the ones I started to change. So, okay. So those are all the ones that I'd previously gone over. All right. Now, I do want to mention, and I should be doing this in all the classes, all right? But some of you have gotten a hold of me and said, well, geez, how am I doing in this class? You never seem to grade anything. As far as I know, everything's been graded. All right? You can go back and you should have a text file in wherever, a .txt file, simple file, in wherever you've turned in your homework. All right? And in there I've got your name, the assignment, a number, etc., how many points it was worth, how many points I gave you, whatever I took off, and why I took it off. All right? But I will tell you, and I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to keep saying it, all right, that in this class, notice what this is. That's 20%. All right? So let's pretend for a second Roger has missed 50% of the time. He hasn't, but let's say he has. All right? Then he gets 10 instead of a 20 right there. And I do have the grade book here, and I do have people's attendance in it. All right? But what I hate is when people say, well, I got A's on everything, and you gave me a B. Why? Because you never showed. All right? And believe me, I'm supposed to be much, much, much more of a hard ass than I'm being. I've heard it from my bosses that, they have talked to me and said, I don't really think that you taping these classes is a good idea. Because what you're doing is you're basically telling students that they don't have to come. I said, that's not at all why it's being done. All right, and people who say that just shows to me their lack of understanding as far as what I do and why I do it. All right, I do it because I've always said this, and I'm not trying to be hokey or anything else here. I believe that any teacher, no matter how bad they are, all right, if the student's a good student, can still succeed. I believe that any teacher, no matter how good they are, if the students don't try, don't come, don't turn anything in, they'll still not succeed. So my job is to take students here that are BC students and turn them into AB students. That's why I tape. All right, and some of you who are in here might go back and watch this tape. Maybe maybe no one in here does. But John can tell you that you'll come in here sometimes, and some of the second year people will be watching the tapes. All right, there's a woman, Laura, who's graduating in May. Laura's a very intelligent person. She would tell me sometimes, she'd come in and she'd have a big smile on her face. Now watch that tape for the third time, and it finally started making some frickin' sense to me. All right, that's why I've been doing the taping. All right. So again, and we were told this semester to put this in here. Now I haven't done this, but technically, if you miss more than 3 days in a row, I'm supposed to let student services know. They're supposed to go and send you a letter, and if you're not back in like 2 more classes, they're supposed to drop you. All right? And it doesn't matter, and it's like, well, what about my financial aid? Doesn't matter to me, but I have not been doing that. All right? But one thing I have to do, and I've shown this to my bosses, is that. If I could make it more than that, I would. Some of you may know Dave Guile, and Dave's out right now. He's on medical leave. But Dave allows you to figure out your grade more or less. And I think you can have up to about 40% for attendance. But if you've got 40% for attendance, and let's say it's Roger. Now Roger comes down with a really bad flu and he's out for 3 weeks. Dave doesn't care, because Roger's the one who figured out what his grade was. All right, I can't do that. It's much easier to do if you give quizzes, if you give tests, etc. Because I've heard from some of my superiors, oh, do what so-and-so does. I said, what's that? Well, when you have very few people show up that day, give a quiz. And if you don't really want to give a quiz, just ask them to put their name on a piece of paper. All right. What I try to do, and I'm not saying I do the best job in the world, what I try to do is treat you like adults and treat you the way you'd be treated out in industry. That's what I believe my job is, to prepare you and to treat you the way you'll be treated. All right, and it won't be, well, geez, Roger, you didn't come today, but Corey, you did. Corey, you write your name on a piece of paper, you'll get a gold star, and tomorrow I'll have Roger in, and I'll cuss at him for a while. That's not really how it works. But I will tell you, and you know who you are, that with some of you, man, you're very bright people. There's not a person in this room that I don't think is a bright person. But some of you, some of your habits are going to have to change. If nothing else, they'll have to change once you get a job. Right? Because I will tell you, and John's heard me say this many times before, that when I get called for a reference for somebody, usually the second or third question that they ask, how is their attendance? All right? And once you ask me to be, if you can use me as a reference, and I say yes, then what that says is, I can now answer honestly any question that's asked of me. All right. Now I like Roger, but if I didn't, and if they said, well, what kind of guy is he? I would never say, well, I don't like him. I wouldn't do that, even if that was the case. That to me is very unprofessional. All right. But I will tell you too. Maybe you've heard me say this. I still remember I had a woman who used me as a reference. This was a good 20-some years ago, and they told me her name. And I had to go back and search in my mind, and I was on the computer then, and I checked some great things. I had failed a person in 3 classes they took with me, and they used me as a reference. So I said to the guy, I said, did you ever hear that old saying that if you can't say something nice about somebody, don't say anything at all? The guy said, yeah, and I hung up. I didn't know what to say. I literally, really and truly did not know what to say. I was amazed at the person, and then I thought, wow, hopefully they'd had other people they could put down as a reference. All right, that was it. That was basically all that I had. We're going to go through 1 or 2 more pretty simplistic Angular projects again next week. On Wednesday of this week, I'd like us to do this as a class so you can see what it's like. We're going to write that future value program, but we're going to write it in PHP. I'll give you all the code, so you don't have to worry about it. And what I don't understand, Corey will help me with. All right? Because the guy knows his stuff. I can tell you that already. All right? So we'll do that. It'll be a very simplistic example. It'll be based out of what's in the book. I don't exactly like the way they wrote it in the book, but we'll use the way the author wrote it because it's fun. All right? You won't go through that and be an expert on PHP, but you'll have some kind of an idea. Those of you who were here last Wednesday, you remember I showed you that thing in ASP.NET, but we didn't write it. I think there's something to be said to have you actually sit down and code some stuff in. All right? Last thing I will tell you is, again, remember, 2 weeks from now, we're done. All right? That'll be the last week. That last week, all right, I'm going to, in the Java class, you've already heard this, we're going to do the GUI and the non-GUI calculator in Java. All right? This week, because I went out myself and paid $38 at Borders and got this. So on that last Wednesday for this class, I'm going to show you exactly what we're going to do in the Bootstrap class. All right? But the Monday is going to probably end up being a lab, just so you know. I want people to catch up. And not that, this, I'm saying this for me. We have to have grades in, I believe it's the 24th, which is 3 weeks from tomorrow. All right? We have to have them in by 2 o'clock. I cannot tell you the percentage of people who give me their stuff Monday morning. But it's big. Last year it was around 40%. All right? And my wife, she just thinks it's funny. She thinks it's amazing that I hardly have any gray hair. All right? I said, no, it's some people get gray hair, some people just lose it. All right? I'd rather have a whole head of white hair if I had my choice, but that's just how it works. All right, any questions on any of the stuff I said? So you heard it. And I should be saying that in every class. So I should say it again in the Java class as well. All right, so everybody hears it. Okay?
So for
Go
this
ahead.
one, we have just the 3 assignments that we need to make sure we have turned in.
The question was, for this class, do we have just the 3 assignments? The answer is yes. There's at least 1 or 2 people in this room who have finished all 3 assignments and already know what their grade is. Yeah, he'd be one of them.
He's good.
I already said that. All right, any other questions? All right, that's all that I had then.